to meet with me. The ground rules are pretty straightforward. It's going to be, I'm going to tell you about myself, and then I'm going to tell you why I'm running for Congress, and then I'm going to kind of mention some of my key platforms and issues, and then I'll open up to questions. And my rule is there's no bad questions, but prefer to keep it professional and as focused on the issues as possible. So with that, let me introduce a couple of key people so you know. Hans Van Mol is running for state rep over in the 157, which is over there in the Treefern area. And Mayor Carolyn Comita up there is running here, fellow Democrat. She's our mayor for Westchester, but she's running for state rep here in the 158. Sixth. I'm sorry, 156. So special thank you to the Henderson High School ladies who volunteered to help out. And like I said, we have Dutch TV here, and as I said, I'm going to move on. But by way of introduction, my name is Mike Parrish. I am running for Congress here in our 6th district, which includes, obviously, as you know, our area in Chester County. But because of the gerrymandering, it goes through the western portion of Montgomery County, up north almost to Macungie, back across down to Downingtown County, and it goes around Reading City. So the city itself is gerrymandered out, but it gets better, it gets more. Then it goes all the way to Lebanon. Lebanon City's in the district. So the general makeup, and this is just ballpark, so don't hold me to it, is about 50% Chester County, 20% Montco, 20% Berks, and then 10% Lebanon. So as we were asked before, it kind of, we have a very diverse population and diverse, go from our mainline area through here over to the very rural area. So a couple cities in between. So my background, as I say, I'm not a career politician, but I'm running against one. I'm running against Ryan Costello, who's our first-term congressman. Before, if you recall, he was a county commissioner. Before that, he was a county recorder of deeds, and then before that, he was a township supervisor. So I come from a different angle. I was an Army brat. I grew up the son of an Army officer. I was born in Germany. Spent some time back and forth there. I was fortunate enough to go to West Point. I graduated back in 1985. Flew attack helicopters for the Army. Served in Korea and in the 101st Airborne Division in Tennessee, and then I served over in Germany myself and participated in Desert Storm in scarily 25 years ago. So and that was a much quicker operation. I was fortunate enough for the Army to send me to Stanford, so I have a master's in astronautical engineering, so I am a token rocket scientist. In fact, I can tell you the equations that deal with global warming, so we can argue how it's caused, but it's coming, so it's happening. I also left the active duty Army in the mid-90s and went to work for General Electric. Started in Washington, D.C., and moved up to Connecticut to the corporate headquarters, and then moved down here where I live now in Malvern, right off Paley Pike. I've been there for almost 15 years. And I have 3 children. I have a son, Connor, who's 14, daughter, Vivian, who is 10, going on 30, and my young daughter is 7, Grace. So, as I said, I was never really politically involved other than kind of being a supporter and voting regularly. But, looking at what's going on in our country for the last couple of years, I decided to get actively involved. So, what does that mean? Has everybody seen my website in the video? Mm-hmm. Okay, for some of you have. So the website is www.parrishforcongress.com. We have back there. But in the video, there's a phrase that I learned growing up from my father. It's called put up or shut up, which means instead of complaining about a problem, come up with a solution. Instead of voting things down 30 times in Congress, come up with a solution. Congress is at a 9% rating out of frustration for people who believe in them because they don't get anything done. I mean, case in point is sequestration. Everybody knows what sequestration is. That was that poison pill mandatory thing because Congress couldn't effectively agree on anything, and it wound up gutting and hurting quite a few people. Think of the military. Sequestration, which continues today in our Army, will have the lowest end strength, the lowest manpower in the Army since pre-World War II. To me, that's a national security risk. It's things that we can do to better adjust our fiscal responsibility, and instead of shirking one's responsibilities and duties of being a congressman, we actually should get things done. Case in point, even more recently was, does everybody remember this veto override vote the other day, last week?
Yeah.
Right, familiar with that? So that was a bipartisan vote, and to me, they failed to think about the law of what we call unintended consequences. And so, yes, they overrode the president's veto to allow the victims of 9/11 to sue Saudi Arabia. And don't get me wrong, I had classmates and friends that died both in the towers and in Afghanistan fighting this war, so I'm not disparaging anything on that, but it just, when they don't think through the issues. For example, now because of that, that has potentially opened up our embassy employees and our soldiers to being arrested and tried for whatever it is. I mean, imagine the Black Hawk Down Rangers, now being sued for war crimes by Somalia. Or imagine the brave Delta Force guys who took out Osama bin Laden. Now they get sued for property damage in Pakistan. It just, to me, it makes no sense. And I guess the height of hypocrisy on the Senate side is when Mitch McConnell gets up there and says, "Oh, I wish the White House was more forthright." It's like, last time I checked in civics, Congress is an equal and opposite body in our government. And it just frustrates me to no end when nothing gets done. And I've been trained from West Point as a leader of character for a lifetime of selfless service to our nation. I've served 31 years in the Army. I served, in a large corporation with GE. I started my own business for a couple businesses. And now I, am dedicated to selfless service versus selfish service. I'm not here for a career. I'm here to make change and to affect change. I'm not worried about 2 to 3 elections down the road. I'm worried about this election, and I'm worried about us. So when you look at the future of the country, I think we're at a crossroads. America is at risk. The idea of America is at risk. For the future of our high schoolers, my children, your grandchildren. This is exactly why I'm running, and I'm dedicated to winning this election with your help in about 26 and a half days when polls open. So a couple of my key platforms that I want to go through is around infrastructure. I believe in national service. I believe that there's a need to fix our infrastructure, and instead of continuing to band-aid our infrastructure with with little continuing resolutions or small fixes here and there, we need a big, bold idea. And my idea is to help upgrade our roads, not just our roads and bridges, but also our power grids to get ready for the renewable energy systems that we should be coming in place, to harden our systems and to be able to protect ourselves. So I look at the idea, when I went to Stanford, I gave back 2 years for every year I went to graduate school. So why not, for the kids coming out today, volunteer for service on an infrastructure corps, whatever you want to call it, and get that training you need either through college or through some sort of a skill, but then give back to the country using, doing this infrastructure corps. Sort of like, if you remember the old Youth Conservation Corps back in the 20s and 30s. I think it fulfills a need. It helps with the younger generation getting a little esprit de corps and a little teamwork. And I think it also solves a problem around the exorbitant cost of college education. So a little story around college education for the high schools here, and we remember this for some of us that grew up in the 60s and 70s. If you remember 1981, I was graduating high school, and we had an 18% interest rate, if you remember that. I was scared to death. I had no idea what we were going to do. So obviously I went to West Point and was successful through the military thing. But you hear people talk today about we want to make America great again, or our country has got all these big issues and risks. Well, I'm here to tell you, for the younger generation, we were a lot worse off back in the 60s and 70s. If you recall, back in the 60s, there was civil rights issues. There were Vietnam War protests. I happened to live in Chattanooga, Tennessee when I was 8 years old, 1971. And my father was the ROTC instructor. And I was in an integrated school, which burned because of the race riots. My father had the Vietnam protests going on. As an 8-year-old, I heard my first gunshots, and martial law curfew was going on back then. That sticks with someone. I'm a young 52 now, but I remember that. It scared me to death back then. My father was going to Vietnam multiple times. We were fighting a foreign war and another one, and it helped ground me in my views of the world and the views of America. And I just we can't go back to how that was back then. If you all remember that, I won't let us go back to that how it was, because we are the greatest nation on earth, and we want to protect it for the next generation of our kids and our families. So one of the things that you'll see, and it may ground me from being a military officer and dealing with a lot of seeing violence firsthand and hearing those gunshots back in 1971. I believe in responsible gun ownership. So I'm a gun owner, and I'm a proud supporter of the Second Amendment. So I don't have any issues on want to take away anyone's guns, but I do believe that it's very important for people to have mandatory safety training. In the military, we were trained how to properly, clean service a weapon, how to properly store a weapon. And the piece that I'm dealing with is the frustration around the 4-year-old who finds a loaded pistol underneath his mom's car seat and shoots his 6-year-old brother. That hurts my heart, having a 7-year-old and little kids, and enough is enough. I mean, we can do better in this country, and the lack of will in Congress, or certain congressmen saying, well, if a bill comes in front of us, he'll vote to support it, which is what Ryan Costello said. I say I'll be a champion of that. I'll put the bill forward. A thing with Mr. Costello that he kind of said is 2 years ago he said, he's there to end the gridlock in Washington. He's gone down there, and I've not seen anything in 2 years to actually change that gridlock. So, if you're not part of the solution, you're obviously part of the problem, and I want to go down there and affect change. Along those same lines, campaign finance reform. There's too much money in politics, and I think that's how we've gotten to this polarizing attitude down in Washington, where it's become extremely partisan. Because this day and age, Washington doesn't want who the best candidate is. Washington wants the best fundraiser. So, case in point, Ryan Costello, 80% of his funds raised have been on special interests. I'm not beholden to anyone. You can look at my finances and you see that most of our funds are from people in here and from individuals. Money doesn't buy elections, but it takes money obviously to buy elections. And that's what's important, because it is expensive. So we need to change that. We need to end Citizens United. We need to get special interests out of our voting process, because it's too frustrating to be beholden, as Ryan Costello is, to individuals. Healthcare and veterans, taking care of veterans is my third platform and third big issue. I am a service-disabled veteran. Ryan's on the VA system. You'll hear stories, and you've heard stories about veterans waiting 1,000 days for healthcare and health services. Well, I'm here to tell you firsthand, and I think there's some veterans in here also, that I go to Coatesville, and it's the best medical service I've had in forever. It's way better than my civilian doctors. It's a fully automated system. You swipe a car. I walk in, and within the doctor's waiting on me. Not to say that my civilian doctors aren't good either, but that's where I'm usually waiting 45 minutes to an hour before I actually get to see the doctor. So, the spin doctors and the political speaks, they're actually right. There is a 1,000-day plus waiting period in some cases, but it's not for services. It's to actually get into the benefits. So it's their people, and I have classmates that that are veterans that are trying to get into the VA system. So it's getting into the VA system is the broken part, and that's what needs to be fixed, not the actual benefits for the soldier or the veterans, because those are great. So here's a novel idea, and this comes from a fellow veteran who understands the process, is why not get your service disabled rating while you're still on active duty and easily transition it over to the VA, so that 1,000-day waiting period is not ever around. Seems to me it's common sense, it's an easy fix. I remember when I left the active duty and went to the reserves, we went from an automated system to a very burdensome paper system back in the 90s, and it's there's as I say, lots of redundancies to reduce government work and regulations, and those are some of the things that are just easy to fix. They just seem to me common sense, and I hope to you common sense as well, because again, following the party line or following a lot of the establishment special interest kind of ways is not the way for us as Americans, because we're the ones who vote, not Washington. So with that, I think I'll open it up to questions. Yeah. I apologize for talking too fast. I get a little passionate sometimes. I know how.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, who's got the first question? Yes, sir.
Do you have any debates scheduled with Mr. Costello?
I think legally, the question was, do we have any debate scheduled with Mr. Costello? I mean, I don't think that we have anything on the docket, and I think the League of Women Voters are trying something, so, but I think that, with 26 days left, I'm not sure where he's running to or running from, but we're available. Yes, sir.
Can you speak on why you're not paying your mortgage currently?
Sure. So the question was, can I speak on why I'm not paying my mortgage currently? So I guess there's a phrase in the military that we learn, leaders eat last. And I was a small business owner, and if you remember back in 2008, 2009 time frame, I had almost 100 employees, and we got into some tough financial situations, and I made a personal decision to not pay myself for 2 years. And so I made sure that I took care of my people, and I made sure that they were paid for, and I made sure that their health care was paid for. And just a sidebar for the health care, one of my big frustrations is was when I was a business owner, I had the naive belief that I was gonna be able to fully fund healthcare for my employees and their families, like I did in the military when I grew up, you know, under TRICARE and under single payer. Every year, my insurance costs for the company went up 30% with minimal use of benefits. So those costs kept going up, going up, going up. We had a couple large projects in 2007, 8, 9 that got to the point where we actually got the work done. I paid my subcontractors, and the customer, for lack of a better word, they wound up going bankrupt. So we didn't get paid. And so again, we came into a tough financial time, like a lot of people. And I made the conscious decision not to take a salary. To my own personal detriment, it got to the point with the mortgage that it got a little, not too much detail, but got to the point where it got over expensive for me. So I take responsibility for it. It's my problem to fix. I'm gonna fix it. My house is not gonna be foreclosed on, because I'm sure that'll be the next question. So it's not gonna happen at all. And you know, people tend to spin things, so. Does that cover it? Okay. So I actually, to finish the part I mentioned, is we're in the loan modification process right now with Wells Fargo. And right now, as of today, they're in the underwriter system, so that's gonna be taken care of. Who knows, it's a slow, long process. Yes, sir.
The Social Security system is a concern of mine.
Sure.
Back in the early 80s, there was an adjustment made essentially to the retirement age because the life expectancy of people have been extended. And the original vision of a social contract and a safety net has been extended, and it's more than it ever was. If you project out forward, 20 years, there's gonna be a real problem.
Right.
What are your plans? What can be done politically?
Yeah.
What can be done in the real world to help fix that right now?
I think one of the simplest solutions, to me, just common sense, and I know that, you know, some people consider it raising taxes, but I think everybody knows, for Medicare, there's no cap on income for paying your Medicare. You pay that on 12 months. But above $118,000 for the high net worth earners who earn more than $118,000, you stop paying Social Security and Medicare. I think just a simple thing is just lift that cap, just remove that cap. Now, again, the will of Congress, because they're the ones that keep the purse, they call that a tax, you know, and something, to me, it just, you know, it seems like a simple fix that we all can do, and that will keep Social Security and Medicare solvent for years to come. You know, because I look at it as, it was, you know, we all paid into it, so the expectation is we would get out. You know, the idea of privatizing, that's something else, just specifically talk about Mr. Costello. He has a 0% rating on Social Security and Medicare from the Coalition for, you know, Preservation of Social Security and Medicare. 0%, I thought it was 14 originally, but it's 0. So, you know, I look at that, and that was one of his platforms, that he will never privatize Social Security and whatnot, but he's already, you know, been on record for 2 votes that have that lead towards the privatization of that, along with the privatization of VA benefits, which I'm against as well. Yes, sir.
Question, Social Medicare and working with VA. Now, I agree with you, Coastal VA has been great. I'm getting physical therapy with them for my leg. I'm also eligible for Medicare because I'm 69 years old, but Medicare and VA do not work together.
Yeah, why is that?
I don't know, the guys write the rules.
Yeah, I know, exactly. So, I'm with you, and I think that, you know, you have a system, and taking that a little step further, you know, is why, I guess the question was why doesn't Medicare and Social Security, or Medicare and VA work together?
Right, because
Yeah.
if you're on Medicare, but you're also entitled to VA benefits like I am being a draftee back in the 60s, why can't I not commingle them and just like?
That's a total common sense idea, you know, and these are the kind of things that I think that you know, the bureaucracy needs to kind of dig into and you know, reduce the redundancies and the overlaps. You know, one of the other ones taking it the other way, on the VA side for pharmaceuticals, they've negotiated bulk pricing, and they've reduced that cost. You know, Medicare Part D, I guess it is, you know, they're not allowed to negotiate reduced costs. Yeah, and that's on the other side, doesn't make any sense. You know, it just seems a significant way to reduce costs and give benefit to all of us, so they're on Medicare or disability or whatnot. So, but I'm with you. I'll look into it. I don't know the answer on how to make them work, but they should work.
Well,
So
takes the will of somebody to make it happen.
I'm volunteering for that. So yes, ma'am.
In a sort of related question, I'm really concerned about the demographics in the country and how that's going to lead to our deficit really blowing up over the next couple of decades. So what's your take on that? Hopefully you have a fiscally responsible take on it.
Sure.
And also along with that, how will it affect funding of education the kids are our future, and to me, that's one of the biggest jobs that government can deal with.
Yeah, I mean, to help with the greater good, I think, I guess the question was the changing demographics in America, which is kind of the aging of us baby boomers.
Right.
I'm on the tail end of that, that becomes a concern, and that's obviously where most of the healthcare costs come in our more senior days. And I think that, helping to make sure that there's a way to keep Medicare and Social Security funded and keep healthcare funded. The Affordable Care Act was a great start. It's not a perfect solution. It clearly needs to be fixed, and there's a lot of loopholes that need to be fixed, but at least it's something that we need to address and to make sure that all of us and our future generations have the ability to have health care, without pre-existing condition and other issues. So that takes that part off the table. I mean, there's some great things, that the Affordable Care Act gave. It helped 12 million people that are underinsured or uninsured get it. It also, provided for our children as they're going through college to stay on our healthcare system. Now, I will tell you the part I don't like, which you heard me talk about insurance before, is I see these rates going up, and that's a piece that needs to be addressed. I think we need to get insurance out of the privatization of the insurance out of doing that. I think having a public option, works great. Now, the Republicans will tell you it's, that'll, bust the bank, but I have yet to see it. So until somebody shows me that actually is over expensive, I don't see it. Around education, one of the things that is a concern for me, and I guess the joys of being a candidate, I never knew this, but some of these kids have interest rates on their college loans that are more than car loans. They're like 10, 12%. It's outrageous. So, there's a way to fix that. That's why I mentioned, I'm not exactly a free education person, but I'm someone that should be able to have a way that our future generations can pay back and can be able to afford their education. So it doesn't become a major debt crisis in 5, 10, 20 years when they walk away and they personally have to declare bankruptcy. So, yeah, I mean, you
That
got one.
doesn't go away.
Yeah, and they don't like declare bankruptcy, is my point, I guess, but, just to me, it's like offering up that infrastructure core as an idea. Like I said, when I went to Stanford, I gave back. You get a job right out of college, you get a skill, and you're able to grow and be a productive member of our society, as I said. But it's something that actually is concerning me, since I have a 9th grader, soon to go to college here in a couple of years, and we're talking about how we're going to fund that. You're in the process right now, Lee, so you're working on it. I think a bunch of others are paying the bill, Piper, as they say. But it's a known concern, and I'm committed to trying to find a solution for both of those, and especially around education. Yes, sir.
One thing, on education, now, I'm weird, all right? I graduated from high school in '64, went to college for 2 years, ran out of money, got drafted, did 2 years in the Army, came out, and it took me almost 19 years after high school to finally actually get my bachelor's degree.
Okay. Congratulations.
Yes, and 13 more years after that to get my master's at a state Great Valley. But all my education after the Army was in public schools. I lived at home. I did not board anyone. But nowhere is it written that you have to finish college in 4 years.
True.
But everyone seems to want to do it in 4 years. And what's the matter with community colleges? I mean,
I agree with that. I think it's.
how come it's not promoted?
Just community colleges and otherwise?
Community college and live at home. I mean, so many kids I talk to, like volunteering with Civil Air Patrol, they can't wait to get out of home and go live in a dorm somewhere.
Yeah,
That's
costs
expensive.
money, exactly. So, yeah. I don't think the 4-year college is hard and fast. I think it's the curriculum is set. You have to get a certain amount of college credits. So that gets you through 4 years. I think traditionally, just based on how we've done it in America, it's 4 years.
Well,
But I
when I
think
was
it's
a kid, you had to carry at least 12 hours to keep your student deferred.
Yeah,
I wasn't from a wealthy family, so I couldn't, as a male, go to school for 6 or 9 hours and work to pay for college.
Right.
Nowadays, they don't have that problem.
right. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities, but I just, you hear about, people that get out of college in 3 years, they get done, and then they're moving on to their postgraduate and otherwise. So I think the community college idea ties in nicely with my, thought about the infrastructure core, because they get a trade, they learn a skill, they don't have to, traditional college, I think, in the future is gonna be different than what we all grew up with. Because, it's, the expectation when we all grew up was, you graduate high school, you get a 4-year degree, then you go off and get a job, but there's certain, skills that with this e-commerce world and the social media world that aren't the same college degrees that we had back, in the thinking mode that we had back in 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So I think that I would hope will work itself out over time. But I think the idea of continuing education for whoever. I always learned, my dad taught me, a day that goes by that you don't learn something is a day wasted. So I've had a lifetime of education, overeducated from degrees and whatnot, but, I learned, every day I try to make an effort to read and to learn something, so. But you have a good point. I think we just had to encourage all of our children to look at other options other than just the traditional four-year college. I think that's what you're getting at.
Yes.
Good. Yes, sir.
What's your take on the TPP and other trade deals?
So, the question was, what's my take on TPP and other trade deals? Here's my view on trade. I think that we, as Americans, should be net exporters of everything. And I think that, shipping jobs overseas and having lower standards like NAFTA, which I think has hurt us as well, I think it degrades our, ability to maintain a competitive workforce in jobs. I'm very much a buy American kind of person. I think that, specifically around oil and natural gas, since we are a net producer of that, I think that we ought to use our own oil and natural gas and only be able to export refined products and reduce our dependence upon foreign refined products from coming overseas. So we have a plethora of oil and gas here in the country. And I think we should continue to wean ourselves off of carbon-based fuels and get into the renewables, which will make us purely energy independent. But I think for all things, we should be able to be a net exporter. I think we're in a $1 trillion trade deficit right now, and we need to fix that. Yes, sir.
Your website mentions, as a businessman, you encountered regulations you felt were burdensome.
Oh, yeah.
Could you speak a little about that experience?
Yeah.
And how you might try to,
It ties in, I'm sure what his next question is going to be, is I had the joys of getting a small business loan, Small Business Association SBA loan, and what you do is you personally guarantee your small business loans with your own real estate and your own properties. So one of the businesses that I started based upon those tough times, and I subsequently left the company, basically the loan got called, and they had no way to get new capital. And this was right as all the too big to fail and the Big Short, all that meltdown was going on. And I remember seeing Admiral Sestak when he was congressman at the time, and I got into a huge debate with his chief of staff, who I believe was former CEO of Jaguar, and I was just, I was saying, why don't you have whoever, the foreperson is, personally guarantee loans like all small business owners personally guarantee loans? And, say, oh, no, we're too big, we can't do that, and then, Joe cut us off. But I'm a firm believer, take responsibility for your actions and things. And the availability of capital for small businesses and innovation is stifling. Likewise, there was I forget the law, I think it's called American Bills, around patents and small businesses with intellectual property. And I'm a patent pending holder. And there was a change in the law that now allows big companies, and it was again one of those unintended consequences, allows big companies to wait out small entrepreneurs for having enforcement of their patents. So the regulations themselves are not small business friendly. Another great example, I was running, after I left my businesses, I was fixing other businesses. And one of the businesses I was fixing was a publicly traded pink sheet company. Probably shouldn't have been publicly traded, but I was the CEO and I was responsible for kind of turning around. And they had a bunch of new Sarbanes-Oxley rules that applied to small businesses equally like in GE. When I was in GE, we had a cadre of people to do the compliance and the accounting and the finance. And a small business that only makes $5 or $10 million, doesn't have $200,000 to $300,000 of discretionary cash to get an audit done, effectively and on time, to file all those compliance rules. And those are things that if we make it more small business friendly, then some of the rules that were intended to avoid the Big Short in the future, too big to fail issues, wouldn't adversely impact small business. So to me, it's really a function of being able to have availability of needed capital, and it's reducing the burdensome regulations, as I said on that video, about having to spend more time, me as a 10-man organization, trying to fill out compliance forms. So, yes, sir, you had your hands.
Do you currently have any outstanding lawsuits, and if you do, can you speak on them?
So I have one that's ongoing, and I'm not going to speak on that because it's ongoing. There's, in America, the idea is anyone can sue anyone for anything. So the joys of taking over some of these struggling businesses is there's people that, that tend to throw lawsuits out, and as the CEO, you get named on a couple. So I got named one as, what was it, for racketeering and RICO and all this stuff that, you know, that I think the mafia bosses used to get sued on over in southern Manhattan. And, you know, as our spin doctors are fortunate to say, they forget to leave that part that those were all dismissed with prejudice, which means they can never sue for the same stuff again. So, yeah, so they leave that part out that goes on, so. Yes, sir.
You talked about climate change and clean energy, but you were also the head of the fossil fuel company. During that time, did you have any environmental infractions, spills, or cause any pollution?
No, so he mentioned that I talk about clean energy and that I've been the CEO of a fossil fuel company, which is wrong. So I was CEO of a natural resources company called Delco Resources. And Delco had two legacies, and this ties into the mess I had. It was right here in Westchester. They had a group that was doing legacy oil wells, so we never drilled, we never fracked, never did anything. These are oil wells that were 10, 20 years old in existence, so it was more of a financial thing, which we've subsequently shut down and closed and capped. On the other side, there was what's called clean edge minerals, and that's where some of my patents are pending. There's a mineral called zeolite, and it's a nice honeycomb structure, not to get too technical, but it's a natural way to do acid mine drainage, which is one of the issues that are around the environment. You know, by the way, Mr. Costello, who professes to be an environmentalist, has a 14% voting record from the League of Conservation Voters. So I have patents pending that deal with these natural minerals that can clean up the environment without fertilizer, without invasive chemicals, without any issues. So, and you can look that up. It's called zeolite. But we didn't have environmental issues, or I guess if they did with the old legacy wells from spills or compliance, those were taken care of individually. So I was at the parent company, not at that level. That clarify for you? Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that you support the Second Amendment. Does that include ownership of assault rifles?
No. So I guess to be fully clear, and I have an op-ed out, as I say, I believe in mandatory safety training. I believe in closing the gun show loopholes. I believe in getting back to the assault weapons ban of the 90s. You know, I think that the mandatory background checks ought to be the same. So I think everyone saw the Supreme Court voted yesterday to kind of keep, what do you call them, voted in favor of, domestic abuse perpetrators having weapons. Yeah, so, and they kept having, they added them to the not allowed to have a weapon piece. So, you know, I think one of my first thoughts would be go to the NRA on day one and say, look, why don't we make a mandatory safety training be NRA training? Because back in the 70s, we actually had that kind of training in the military, the Rod and Gun Club for kids to learn how to have responsible gun ownership. And now it's just gotten kind of crazily to whatever reason, but anything, if you use the word gun, then it's automatic, somebody automatically thinks we're trying to take guns away, and that's not the case at
No,
all.
I'm okay with that. I just don't want everybody.
Yeah, there's no need.
An assault rifle.
Correct.
Going here.
Correct, yeah. Yes, sir.
Could you expand upon your point of view on trade?
Okay.
Yeah, you sort of said it's great if it's made in America, but the world's more complex than that.
Well, I agree. I mean, we do have a global economy, and I don't want, you know, there's certain, I mean, rare earth minerals are 97% controlled by China. So, you know, we need those for our electronics. So, you know, you gotta have trade somewhere. I was thinking more of the more fundamental things like, you know, American-made clothes, or, you know, like refined products that we have, you know, refineries and things like that. But, you know, in order to have trade, you need to have, you know, positive trade for both products, you know, and goods. So, but I guess my ultimate view is help find a way to reduce that deficit, the trade deficit that we become so dependent upon, you know, China and other countries.
How would you do that?
Well, I think I would try to balance the playing field when it gets around the TPP or NAFTA to make sure that you know, the environmental laws are adhered to. There's no child labor. There's no, you know, we're not going to trade with countries that have, you know, that are violating some of the basic human rights that we standardize. And I think that we got to find a way to encourage American manufacturing to stay here and to grow. I think around infrastructure is a great opportunity. I think building a lot of the renewable energy, you know, the wind and the solar and the hydro, some of the new power plants and stuff, those are opportunities to get manufacturing back in. But I think also, you know, toys and other things, you know, and that's part of the regulation. We got to reduce the over-exorbitant, you know, difficulties of making sure that our workers, you know, are taken care of, or, you know, in compliance, if you will. You have thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I think about the automobile companies you're moving to Mexico.
Yeah.
The reason they're moving to Mexico is they're going to build small cars in Mexico because the people in the United States don't want to drive them. and we can't make them cheap enough here, so we're shipping them to Mexico to still meet some of the environmental goals we have as a country to reduce fossil fuel consumption and increase miles per gallon. So
Sure.
I think it's a lot more complex than, you know,
Yeah,
it
I mean,
appears at the surface. So
yeah,
there's,
I agree with that.
there are a lot of nuances to these positions and what people say and what they do.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess it's that exact point. You were talking about small cars. We're not the consumer of the small cars anymore. So I think the concept I'm talking about is if you know, we're shipping jobs overseas and bringing the products back here, that's one of my frustrations. But in your scenario, if you know, the cars are gonna stay, you know, in Mexico or wherever, then.
No, they'll come back here.
Yeah, well, let you drive back, of course. to the
Well,
borders.
no, they'll be exported from Mexico to the United States.
Well, and that to me is a frustration. It's like, you know, that's the cheap labor idea. So, but you know, we gotta make sure our labor's affordable and we're competitive, and that's what we need to be. So.
How do you propose to do that?
How do I propose to be
Yeah.
competitive?
Yeah.
I'll leave that up to the, you know, to the business owners and everything else, so, you know, I mean, you know, they, you know, kind of boil the ocean on that, I don't, you know, have a, you know, that's do we need a regulation to do that? I don't know. And it's, you know, is that something that Congress should get involved with?
We need to be more competitive through education and training and
Right.
incentives for taxes.
I think she had a question first.
I was just wondering, I hope I didn't miss this part, but if you could talk about education, like K through 12, and
Sure.
what you would do to address the high stakes testing that's kind of the main drive of
The
public
Common
education
Core
right now.
stuff.
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
a 2-year-old, so I'm concerned about
Yeah.
his schooling.
Well, you know, I believe that early education, you know, is critical pre-K, and I think that education is the key to innovation. That's one of my platforms, because I think that innovation then leads to jobs, and it leads to new industries and new opportunities. And I think that all our kids should have an ability, as I was, you know, to be able to go to any schools they want to, West Point, Stanford, Wharton, in my case. I think that that's probably more of a state-related issue. I think that also to your concern as far as Common Core, you know, I struggle with that one because I think that there ought to be standards, but I don't think that we should, you know, it's hard to say that we need, you know, firm regulation, because I think the concern is always around teaching to the test, if you will. So, you know, we should have ways around that, but I would love to think that our kids know about the Constitution. And, you know, you ever see those late night shows when they ask kids, you know, who fought in the Civil War and things like that? That drives me insane. You know? So, you know, that's just, it's sad, but, you know, you see a lot of that. So, you had a question next, then I'll come back to you.
Competitiveness, a lot of what I'm looking at could be currency driven. When you think about the relative value of the US dollar versus the yuan, pegging, deflation actually taking place in the US, driving up the relative value of our labor on a global market. How can we fight against things like that?
You know, I'm not an economics expert, but I'm open to ideas. You know, I think that's a concern. I think, you know, having the amount of debt that we have with China, right now we're still, you know, a dollar-based economy in the world, and I think that China's making some plays for the yuan and elsewhere, and I think we got to be able to counter that with continue to have a strong economy that we have and continue to grow. And I think to your point, you know, and I think that gets back to that net trade thing. You know, well, it's an economic war.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we won't get into that level of detail because we'll be recorded, but we can talk about that afterwards, so. Yeah, the next one. Yes, sir.
Can you speak to why you're currently not paying your staff?
I don't know. Where's my staff? Are you currently being paid?
Yes, I'm his campaign manager, I'm currently being paid, thank you.
Yeah, I don't know where you continue to get that from because everybody's paid. So. Yes, ma'am.
As a female voter, could you elaborate a little on your stances on equal pay for equal work and
Sure.
health
Yeah.
issues?
I actually have an op-ed out for that too, if you haven't seen it. These are all on our website. And, you know, is everybody familiar with Lily Ledbetter? You know, that's a good high school project for you. So Lily Ledbetter was an executive with, I think, Goodyear, and she's one who brought up this issue about equal pay for equal work. And, you know, she fought the battle, she lost, but she ultimately, there's what's called the Lily Ledbetter Law for equal pay for equal work. And, you know, again, another thing that you never think about, but you realize that the American workforce, almost 50% of our workers are females, are women, 47% to be exact. But yet they only earn 79 cents on the dollar. You know, and to me, you know, the economic side is, you know, that's a hard pill to swallow for the same kind of job. You know, in the military, you know, we pay people based upon the position or their rank, regardless of, you know, race, creed, color, or otherwise. So, and I have two great daughters that I look at their futures, and I would expect them to have as much opportunity as all of us as guys. I mean, this country's evolved a long way since, back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, and our workforce is made up of working women, and they deserve the best benefits we can possibly get them without any competition, or without diverse competition between being a male or female from a sexist standpoint. Does that help? Yes, sir.
Question. Years ago, I was working for what was then Shared Medical Systems. We were bought out by Siemens. I survived to the third round of layoffs. Problem was, is too much gray hair and making too much money, but age had nothing to do with it.
Right.
So I went to your predecessor before Costello with the Gerlach's office, and I talked to him. They said, too bad.
Really?
We don't care.
See, that's crazy.
So how do you protect older workers? Now, it took me a while to find another full-time job. I bounced around with my master's degree. I actually taught part-time at Delaware County Community College and Cabrini College. Now, I couldn't teach at local high schools because I don't have a teacher's certificate. I could teach college level. But I eventually did find a full-time job when I was 60 with Septis. I worked in their IT department for almost 8 years. But then you look at SEPTA, they go to buy new rail cars. The old Silverliner 4s were GE cars made in Erie. GE doesn't do that anymore.
Right.
So they had to go to Hyundai Rotem and ended up with a bunch of lemons.
120 of them, right?
Yes.
So, exactly.
But Philadelphia used to be the home of Brill, Bud Carr, made the best stuff.
Yeah, the question is how do we handle, protecting senior workers? And of course, there's laws in place for age discrimination, and I think,
Doesn't work.
well, that was what I was gonna add, is I think that we gotta put more teeth around a lot of things, a lot of the regulations to make sure that you and other seniors are protected when they get to these situations.
Is they contracted with Wipro, which is an Indian consulting company. They brought in a bunch of Indians, people from India to work here,
Yeah.
able to get H-1B visas, claiming that they did not displace and they couldn't find any American workers, lying through their teeth again,
Yeah.
but it's never enforced.
Yeah, and I think that's something that, as your congressman, as we hear these issues, you've got my personal commitment, and you come, box mayors, if that's true, that I'm always committed to us, and I would dig into that for you and try to do the best I could to help out, so. Because I hate to hear those things.
Yes.
Well, I know. I mean, I'm, at his young 52, I'm gonna be there soon myself, so, those are things that.
I get mail 3 weeks before my 55th birthday.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear, so. Yes, sir.
Why did you donate so much money to Tom Corbin's campaign?
Why did I donate so much money to Tom Corbett's campaign? Because as I said at the beginning of the question was, why did I donate so much money to Tom Corbett's campaign, our former governor? And as I mentioned earlier, I was never really politically involved. However, I had a friend that needed people to attend a certain event. He asked me to write a check, so I wrote it for him. I will tell you that I absolutely regret that, and it's not because of political purposes. I just didn't, we had a long conversation about what we used to call capital stock tax, and at the time I saw where we were going, and obviously he's no longer governor. So, yeah. Did you donate to him? Okay. Yes, sir.
Do you support the plan to move inmates from Guantanamo Bay to the United States?
No. I think that foreign terrorists they don't necessarily get the rights of our Constitution, and I think they should be tried as combatants.
Seems probable that the House will remain in Republican hands. How would you, as a Democrat, work with them to try to get anything that you'd like to push through
Sure.
achieved? I mean, it just seems like we'd see
Yeah,
more
well,
of the same.
as I was
kind of
saying,
past behavior.
Yeah, I think that I hope that there'll be a groundswell of enough of us, new people coming on board that are not gonna follow the party establishment, and I think the idea of compromise is critical. Just as a side story, going through this process, I've talked to some of our Republican congressmen in the area, and I was told I can't be seen with them in public, and they were told they can't be seen with me in public, and it's like, really? As I will end this, my view of being a Republican or a Democrat, to me, this is my personal view, is like being a Catholic or a Protestant. At the end of the day, we're Americans first, and we all have to realize that. All this, hate speech and hate discontent, it doesn't help anyone. And so we have to be able to compromise and not not follow party ideology as much as following what the greater good is for us. And my view is I will never vote party line. My priority is gonna be us, in the 6th district. And then it's gonna be in the Commonwealth, and this is in order, then for the greater good of America. And then and only then will I consider a vote that has no impact on us. But I think every vote, we should be able to, one, read the entire law and also be able to make sure it impacts us, positively from a jobs, economy, national security standpoint, and otherwise. So, yes, sir.
Well, assuming you win, how long do you see yourself, have you thought about how long to be in the office if
Yeah.
voters keep re-electing him?
Yeah, I'm not, like
To me,
sort
that
of,
seems part of the problem. I mean,
Well,
I
it's
just say,
absolutely a
career
problem.
politicians.
yeah, and I'm not there for,
We're having
like
the
I said.
term limits that Newt Gingrich,
I'm
originally
I'm good with
proposed.
term limits, so,
Yeah.
that's, the question was, how long do I see myself being in Congress? I'm here for 2 years, and we'll decide what happens 2 years later. So I'm not there to, like I said, make a career, I'm not there to seek any future office, I'm there to make an impact and let people know, serve notice that we here in Chester County, 6th District, are, the breadbasket of America, if you will, so. Yes, ma'am, and then I'll go over there.
What are your thoughts on paid family leave? Is that something?
I think it should be, it's a great thing, absolutely, especially like, maternity leave and paternity leave. I think that ought to be something that is mandatory for others. I know that businesses don't do that. I think my view, as a business owner and as a Wharton grad, they teach us, that, CEOs' jobs is to increase shareholder wealth. But I think that's old school thinking, and I think that's where we've gotten this pay inequality, for the haves and have-nots. And I say that, and there comes with some sort of a benefit, I haven't fleshed this totally out yet, but I say that companies that are socially responsible for their employees, because it's the backs of the workers that get the multi-million-dollar salaries for the CEOs. And I think that it ought to be to increase shareholder wealth and improve, workers' lives. And that's gonna take a while to change, obviously, but I think that's something that's important, such as paid medical leave, so. You had a question over here?
Yes, as a student, I have taken many tests and standardized tests.
Uh-huh.
How do you feel about the classification and intelligence through testing?
Well, that was an earlier question about Common Core, and, I know that's difficulty when people are testing to the test. I disagree with testing to the test necessarily. I know that you're gonna have tests through life, unfortunately. But I think that there ought to be some minimum standards that all of us as Americans adhere to, and I kind of gave the story about, just some civic knowledge of, American history or whatnot. So, I think that there's a lot of that discussion on the education side, and a lot of state level discussions. I think, Han's still here, I think Carolyn might have been here too, so we can talk there. At the federal level, to me, it's more important to be able to focus on, early education, and as I said, education is key to the future of the nation. But, death by 1,000 cuts of perpetual tests and all that, I think, might be a little overly absorbable. So, yes, sir.
I'm afraid a lot of people don't know you're running, so.
Well, that's why we're doing this.
What's the plan for the next few weeks?
Well, I'm gonna seek your help, obviously. It's one of the challenges is raising money. I haven't raised as much as Ryan's raised because, he's got all the special interest money he's got, but, I can use your help on that. But I would hope that you can spread the word, spread the gospel, if you will. I'm an open book, and, you can ask me anything you want. You come see me, call me anytime. I'm out on the street everywhere, every day. One of the things that gets crazy in campaigning, if you will, is there's an expectation of me sitting behind a phone answering, or calling for dollars. And it doesn't get any better, because I'm sure Ryan's doing the same thing on both sides of the party, and that's the stuff that we have to break. Because it's more fun being out here answering questions and meeting all of you and understanding what your concerns and issues are, and being able to take that back and actually get something done down there. Be able to compromise and work with colleagues across the aisle to solve problems that deal with us individually, but also us as a greater American community. So the biggest thing is you gotta get my name out, and we gotta get our name out, and I'm seeking your help to do that. And that's why we're having these meetings, and there's more of them to come around the district and around the county, and, let everyone know. Got our website, parrishforcongress.com, and, you'll see, mailers and TV and all the other fun stuff that comes with that. And I try, because of my earlier experiences, whoever asked me about the corporate things, I was on that side, now I'm on this side, and I hate, being on that side. So, not that I enjoy this side either, but I think it's an important thing. So, but I can use your help, that's the biggest part. So,
If I can just let everybody know too, we have another one, this is the first in a series of these. Our next one is on Monday, at Phoenixville High School. And we're focusing our efforts on the Phoenixville and Schuylkill area, but anybody that you know, if you enjoyed yourself tonight, and encourage friends that you have in that area to head out on Monday night and meet Mike at Phoenixville High School.
Yeah, well, I think I'll stay around if anyone wants to ask me other personal questions, but I know it's getting a little bit late since it's 8 o'clock. But I thank you very much for your time, and Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.